Hey, it's producer Rob. We've got Jeff and we've got Bart over here.
Guys.
Thanks for tuning in. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, thank you very much.
Yes.
If you're listening to us right now, that means you're not seeing us, but you can see us if you want to. Just go to Jeep Beach Official on YouTube, and you'll be able to find out everything that we've done in the past, most of them anyway.
That's a scary thought.
Videos. Yeah. And if you are watching this and you want the audio portion of it, all your favorite podcast platforms will cover that.
Yes.
So, ready for the show?
Ready.
You ready?
Yes,
We're ready.
Thanks for tuning in. Here we go.
It's now time for another episode of the Off-Road Toolbox. A Jeepers guide to everything off-road. Powered by Best Price Trailers.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Off-Road Toolbox. Of course, you know me. I'm Jeff, and next to me is Mr. Bart.
Hello.
And behind the camera there is
Joe.
Joe Schmo.
Yeah, right. Joe Schmo. No, this is Rob, and we are ready to go with some pretty cool topic this time around.
We're trying to...
Not that the other ones aren't. This is kind of neat because this is what you can do.
You got excited over this.
I did. I thought this was pretty neat.
So are we doing the 4.0 or the 3.6?
The 3.6.
The 3.6.
3.6?
Yeah,
3.6, 3.8.
It's 3.6, 3.8. Because
We're going to try to improve the...
that too.
Improve the performance of the motor itself. It's a fine line that you have to walk to make it work, but it is possible to make improvements with these motors.
So we are doing the improved performance episode for today.
Improved performance on a Jeep JK.
Okay, and that's those
Or JL.
or JL.
Or
3
JL.
point, it's got the 3.6 Pentastar.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
All right, guys. We'll start with I see number one being the cold air intake,
Yes. So
which is out there.
they're out there. I mean, some people say they work, some people say they don't. But once again, this is a fine line that you have to walk. If you're giving more air into the motor, you got to have more air coming out. But at the same time, you have to have a little bit of back pressure to make it work all
So
the right way.
you need the exhaust to be a little more open, but not too much.
Exactly.
So there's a little bit of what do you call it? They got to work.
Yes.
You got to do a little work on
You
it.
got to do some calculations and some figurings. The pros of the cold air intake, it can improve the airflow to the engine, which of course increases the horsepower. The cons is the gains are modest, meaning that, like I said, it's based on how much air you can get through. The other thing that you got to worry about is your exhaust. The exhaust, like we just said, you want to open it up, but you don't want to be...
You want to do it too much.
You don't want to be a straight pipe, basically.
No.
You want a little bit of back pressure, a good muffler, cats, so on and so forth. The pros of upgrading that is the exhaust system can reduce the back pressure and improve exhaust airflow, but you have just that small amount of back pressure to keep things going. Some systems can be expensive, and installation may be very complicated, depending on what it is and where it is. I mean, my JT, to do that, it's a pain.
Really?
So I probably won't be doing
Now, like exhaust, for example, a MagnaFlow.
a MagnaFlow or something of that sort.
That is that like a cat back, or can you do?
Well, there you can do cat back, or you can do all the way from the exhaust manifold back. But that
Exhaust-
gets
either
expensive.
Yeah.
If
that
you're
gets-
going to do it, you want to do it from the exhaust or from the exhaust manifold all the way back.
Yep.
Because the cats also too are redesigned to still do what they're supposed to do,
Right.
but give that flow through.
Yeah.
If you just go to do up to the cats back, you're just changing the tune of
Yes.
sound.
Okay.
Basically. I mean, you get a little bit more exhaust
yeah.
out, but it's not like going from manifold all the way back. Other thing that you're going to have to think about is tuning the ECU.
Yes.
Your ECU is what controls how much gas and air mixture is happening every time a piston goes up and down. It's calculating this constantly. So a custom tune or remap can optimize the air-fuel ratio, ignition timing, and other parameters to unlock significant performance gains. But the con is it requires professional tuning, and an in-tuned motor can actually cause major issues.
Now-
you can lose a motor.
Well, now here's the thing: you get those. You can plug in those plug-in computer change. Is that what you're talking
Those are
about.
okay for small changes,
Yes.
but if
Okay.
you're doing like cams and all that, you're going to want to get in someone that knows what they're doing with a computer and change it that way.
Okay.
And they actually put a laptop on and they hook
it's-
up.
it's
and
a laptop
Yeah,
and-
they're
The program for
It's a lot more than buying a programmer. That's just a little.
yeah.
the program alone usually runs anywhere from $1,200 to $2,000, depending on who you go with.
Yeah.
To make the changes, and it's only for one vehicle, meaning that if you buy it for a Jeep Gladiator, it's for a Jeep Gladiator. You can't go to a JKU and put it on JKU and tune.
Even though it's the same motor.
Nope. It's a different computer system and the way it's laid out. And these programs are written to each ECU.
Okay, understood.
Another good thing, which I like, forced induction.
You're talking turbo or supercharger, right?
Supercharger, turbocharge. Let's back up here. Supercharger is basically sits on top of the motor, will force air into the motor.
Okay.
Your turbocharger sits on the exhaust side of the motor and helps pull the air through.
Okay.
Which one is best?
Well, one is with a supercharger, you pretty much almost get, when you step on the gas, it's there.
Instant. There's
It's
no
instant.
lag.
Yeah.
You're not spooling up the
The
turbo.
turbo lag was always an issue.
Yep.
Yes.
Turbo, you gotta spool it up just like just like the drag cars.
I remember I had a Chrysler Laser back in the 80s.
Oh yeah,
And it was
exhaust.
and it had a turbo on it,
Yep.
and there was a little bit of lag there, but it was like a pause. You know,
Yep.
You'd start out, and it was almost like, there was something wrong. You needed a sensor somewhere, but it was
But that was the
interesting.
way it was.
Yep.
So once you got it going,
Oh boy, it was quick.
it'd spool
It
up
would
and away
knock
you would
your-
go.
Your neck would jerk back. Oh yeah,
So-
Good
So
times with that.
I rented one of the, we're out at the Outer Banks. We're doing a course, and I told the guys we're at the Outer Banks.
You had mentioned that
We-
before. You did. You said you had a
four-cylinder.
blast with that
that
four-cylinder one.
that little 4-cylinder turbo.
Yeah, the Jeep, the new one.
Yes.
Yeah.
It would kick.
No kidding.
It was impressive. It was very, very impressive.
Now, are they? I don't think they're making those anymore. Are they?
I don't
don't
know.
know.
I don't know.
I
know.
don't
I know.
believe-
Like, I actually looked at doing a turbo in my 3.8. You know, and
Yeah.
I actually wanted to do a Banks turbo versus a supercharger. And now one of my friends did a supercharger on his. And again, it depends on the maturity of the driver,
Oh boy.
because if you're going to have all that horsepower, you're
gonna
going to
wanna
break.
play with it.
You're going to break things.
Yeah. So you got to make sure then, if you're going to do a supercharger or a turbocharger on a very basic Jeep or any other vehicle, you need to beef up the suspension.
Oh, just everything.
And the thing too is it has to be tuned to that motor.
Correct.
You know, if it's a stock bone or a stock motor, they're going to tune it for that. They're going to give you the pulleys that would be appropriate for
Yeah.
that, because you can change pulleys and change how much air you're putting into that motor.
Wow. So
And
you
then-
can even change the amount of
Flow going
turbo
into
that
Yep.
you get. Then.
But think
And
about
supercharger.
what are you doing to your
Supercharger.
transmission? What are you doing to the rear end? What are you doing to
Exactly.
the drive line? What are you doing to all the U joints? And the drive
Everything
shaft?
is going to be torqued
Torqued.
on. The torque
Yeah.
is increased, so that's going to.
Again,
Yeah.
it comes down to the maturity of the guy.
You need to go to Destination 4x4.
Yep.
and get with Jason.
and say, this
Yes.
is what I want to do, and he will work you through that if you so
will.
want to. It's not just a matter of bolting on a
No,
supercharger.
no.
Back in the day, we used to be able to, like the old Chevy 350s. We'd
Yes.
take a 671 and throw it straight on there, and we go.
Yeah.
And all you
problem.
do is just a timing. That was it.
Yeah, but now it's computers. Again,
and
air,
everything. Everything
the
is
spark, everything has got to be looked at.
this sensor, that sensor,
Yep.
pre, post. So, but anyway, so the pros to adding the supercharger or the turbocharger can dramatically increase the horsepower and torque by as much as 50% or more.
That's quite a jump.
That's
Yes.
a huge
and then again,
jump.
with the cons, obviously, it requires significant changes to the engine.
Very
and all the
expensive, very
supporting
complex.
cooling. We didn't mention the cooling and the fueling.
Nope.
Yeah, that's got to be adjusted as well.
Yep. All that
There's
plays.
a lot that goes into it.
There's a lot that goes into getting the performance that you think that you want to get out of.
But I'm sure Jason at Destination 4x4 has all the info
Yes,
on
he
that.
does.
He knows what to do.
So another thing that you would have to do if you're going through and you're trying to get all these improvements and getting that performance up, you're going to have to change the cam. You're going to have to put a cam in there that's going to have to open those lifters up a little bit longer, let more air get in there, and compress, and then dump that air out quick.
So you're talking getting into the guts.
You have
Yes.
to get into the guts.
So you're actually probably pulling the engine at this point.
You can
Is there some that you can
do it inside. You can pull the radiator out.
okay,
and all
okay.
that. But typically, you would pull the whole motor, go through the motor,
Yep.
freshen it up, make sure everything's right.
Yes.
Because here you want to put all this stuff in there.
Yep.
and you go out and start it up, and you go down the block, and all of a sudden it's not running anymore because something failed.
Yes.
So it's best if you're going to do this type of upgrade and try to get the performance out of it, go through the motor,
Yes.
new lifters, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
So if you have an older engine, for example, I got a 97 4.0, even though we're talking 3.6, they do make.
Oh
the
yeah,
stuff
they
for
make
4.
all, they make
So
all this stuff. For
I
that.
couldn't just say, I'm going to throw a supercharger on it as
Yeah.
is.
No, I
it's
would
going
get
to
it
blow that
out,
motor
yes.
right up.
Yes.
You may get you may get a little bit out of it,
Yeah.
but eventually it's going to go poof.
Yeah. Okay. So make sure you go through everything then.
Right. So the performance of the camshaft improves the timing for the valves to get
Right.
the air in and out. The cons: this requires the internal engine work, and like we said, have to pull the motor out, go through it, and do all that
A
stuff.
lot of other upgrades,
A lot
which
of-
means a lot more time and money.
Yes. Now, another thing that you can do if you got the motor out, you're going to want to port and polish the cylinder heads. What this means is you're matching up your different parts that hook up to the head.
Okay.
You're matching them to where that everything is laminar, meaning that it's very smooth flowing from the intake into the head, from the head.
Are you
out the
increasing the
exhaust.
size or just cleaning them up?
You're just cleaning them up. You're
Okay.
matching them up
Yep.
as best you can.
Getting it back to almost
Smooth.
when it was out of the factory.
Right. No.
Or better.
Or better.
Better.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they put it in this casting. They
Yes.
cast
Oh,
it.
they just put it in.
Yeah.
and
That's
then they
it.
just throw it in the heap, and then
Yep.
put it all together, and out the door it goes.
Okay.
So to get that performance, you make it as smooth as possible. That includes both coming from, if you have a carb, you can go from a carb into the intake, from the intake into the head, from the head back into the exhaust.
Okay. Okay.
So all those things can be smoothed out. Upgrading your fuel injectors and the fuel pump, because if you go to a larger injector, you're going to have to bump up your PSI on the fuel.
So you got to change your fuel pump.
So
at the
you
same
got to
time.
change the fuel pump.
Okay.
So that you got to do a little bit of research on that. Once again, if you're going to that larger injector and you're not giving it enough fuel and you're tuning for that injector, you're not going to get anything out of it.
Okay.
And the cons, it requires tuning to match
Yeah.
the same thing. There are stroker kits, but they are less common. It's very expensive to do a stroker kit on a Pentastar.
Why is that? Is it computer related?
Well, nobody really does it.
Oh, okay.
And the calculations that you have to do to make it work, that's half the battle.
Okay. Now, older motors, you can do stroker.
Like
They probably
your
have a little-
4.0?
4.0,
That's probably been, yeah. you
Yeah,
can-
that's
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you
if
could-
I had to rebuild a 4.0, I would do a
it's
stroker.
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 Yeah.
Yep.
See, I'm tossed between the 4.0 and the Jeep and the LJ, or putting a 350 in it, a small block 350. So
Boy, I tell you what, if you do that, you are going to upgrade everything underneath too, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah. But the 4.0 that's in it now is good. So
Yeah.
I know there's no sense in doing anything.
no sense of doing
It
that.
can
Just-
last forever.
yes, they are.
Yeah.
So the
And your brain, everything. You know what I'm saying?
oh yeah, I got AC. I have
Yes.
to worry about. I got
Everything.
yeah.
And so I always looked at like if my 3.8 goes,
Yeah.
I would have somebody rebuild it. Just go through it versus doing the Hemi versus doing whatever, because that's that same engine, and all we're doing is giving it new guts.
There's
you
new
know,
guts.
Freshen
And you're
it
not
up.
you don't have to go through and redo the brakes. You don't have to go through and redo
No.
any of the drive shafts, any of that stuff.
don't have to reprogram it.
Nothing,
No,
yeah. It's just
no
fix the
computers.
engine.
No,
Yep.
no.
Yeah. If you go
modules.
back to that, but if you go to the stroker on the 4.0, you do have to do.
Let me ask you this. Say you go and you want to upgrade, you throw a little something in it to make it a little faster, a little better, a little stronger, a little more
Okay.
torque. How much before you start breaking things? Like 10% more? Like as you mentioned, 50% could get you. What if you went
yeah.
20%? Just a 35%.
As long as, I mean, once again, it all depends on what you're on. If you're on sand and you ramp up on it, the possibilities of breaking something are very small.
Yeah.
Now, if I get out on asphalt and I
Yep.
ramp it up, I'm going to break something.
Yes,
Yeah, because it's not designed to
for that
do-
resistance.
Yeah.
Where the sand, you don't have as much resistance. You're just going to spin your tires.
Right, okay.
Until you hit something.
And
Hopefully
then-
you don't hit something. You
Yeah.
know. You know what I'm saying? You can
Right.
hit, something that you don't see, and then all of a sudden start snapping drive shafts.
Yep. So that's the downside to
Okay.
that. Pros for doing this is, you're going to get the power gain. It's going to increase your performance. Makes it most acceptable both on-road and off-road. You can tailor it to what you're going to do, where you're going to go. You increase your fun factor. Believe it or not, improved acceleration.
Yeah.
Because, I mean...
Yeah. Of course it's going to be fun.
Your 3.6 is better than my 3.8. I'm just going to tell
Well,
you.
that's because of the transmission.
Yes. Oh, 8-speed transmission.
8-speed
versus,
transmission makes a huge difference.
Yes.
And they even, everybody I've talked to...
and more horsepower. You're like 100 more horsepower than my 3.8.
Yes. But still, it's a transmission.
Yes.
Because you're 6-speed, I believe it is.
I'm 4.
You're 4-speed. Okay.
I'm 4-speed. Yep.
So there you have it. The cons, performance upgrades can be expensive, especially, forced induction. You can get up in the $4,000 or $5,000 price range just for the induction. And then you got to include your labor, parts, pieces.
That gets really expensive.
Yes.
And it's also, like I said, complex. It's
It's
just,
very complex.
you get into the weeds.
Because
into that stuff.
it's not just slapping this part on
Right.
and makes it look better. It's a matter of putting this part on, making it work.
Okay.
And there's a lot of goes into it. Also, too, whenever you're doing things like this, you're trying to increase that horsepower. You're going to have to run a higher octane. So fuel cost. Yeah. I mean, depends on if you're going to have to run 92 or if you're going to run, 98?
Oh, yeah. Or 100 octane. We get some
100
racing
octane,
fuel.
104. It just all depends on how it's tuned and what it's tuned. And you're talking $5-10 a gallon, depending on where you're going.
And of course the fuel efficiency would really,
But the fun factor.
Oh, fun factor. Well, here's the perfect fix-all.
Okay.
392. Just get the 392.
But you're looking at what, $100,000?
How much you think
70.
these upgrades are? 70.
70 plus.
Don't buy a new one. Buy one that's a couple years old.
And that's stock.
Yeah.
Please. Okay, I'm going to go back here.
Okay.
Buy and use something of that sort.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay away from it unless it's a little old lady from Pasadena that keeps it in the garage and it has maybe 1,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
Because anybody else out there, what they're going to do.
They'll be romping on it.
They're going to romp
Well,
on
they
it.
usually have low miles, so it's you're burning my bubble.
I'm sorry. I'm not.
That's still a lot of money versus what if you wanted to do this, let's say $5,000 or $6,000, you could rebuild your 3.6 and make it better.
Yeah,
Are we
that's
close
just
to that?
the motor. That's just the
motor.
motor.
Yeah,
But how
yeah.
about everything else underneath? The guts, the everything, your drive shafts. You gotta beef everything else.
you wouldn't
up,
have
right?
to.
You wouldn't have
You
to
wouldn't
because
have to.
you're basically staying stock and just upgrading a little bit.
Yeah, so you're only probably adding what, 30, 40, 50 horsepower?
Yeah,
You're
if
going to be
that.
less than 100 horsepower, so you're not going to be breaking things.
So you can get something that's not okay.
So if you wanted, so if you had a point where, hey, I got to do some major work on this engine, so then what am I going to do? I mean, I would look at making those modifications and keeping it simple, versus.
Because once you start, like Bart had pointed out, once you start going into the V8, now you got to have the wiring harness. You got to adapt the wiring harness to the Jeep to the whatever motor you're putting in. You got to get it tuned. You got to worry about like AC. All that stuff gets played in, and it gets expensive.
Yeah, I imagine it would.
So, in reality, if you can get just a few more horsepower out of what you already have, go that route. That's my personal opinion. Everybody has their different.
And go what you can afford.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can afford, a Hemi, and go for it. If
You're
you
talking, what, $50,000 to $75,000 to put a Hemi in, I think it is.
What if you already had one? I got a truck that's got a Hemi in it.
Well, that's what they're going to do. They're going to take a truck and pull the guts out of it for the motor.
But I have the motor, so it's not going to cost
But
that much.
but you got
just talking.
You got a
installation,
classic
right?
car here, man.
I know.
You're
I'm
not going to touch it.
Look, I'm just BSing.
You're
I'm
not
just
going to
always,
touch it. Go to a junkyard and
know.
get one.
Yeah. But still,
Yeah,
you're going to pay $6,000 for it.
Yeah. Okay.
And
For a
then
that's
junker,
true.
And then you got to go back through it. because
Yes.
You don't know what's wrong
You don't
with
know
it.
what's wrong
right?
with
No.
it. You don't even know if it's cracked. So it's got to go to the machine shop. So there's a lot that plays into doing it.
Yep.
Unless you buy a crate motor, now you're talking 10 to 14 grand,
Yeah.
and that's just a short block. That's not heads.
And we
That's
had talked to Jason about switching out, doing the I think LS swap.
Yep.
Yep.
The LS.
And he frowned on that too.
Well, he's saying he's trying to get it under 20 grand.
yes.
Yes.
You know, if you can get it right now, it's kind of hard
Yes.
to do that just because of the prices of everything.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so
So even at $25,000, you're putting $25,000 into whatever year vehicle you have.
right. So
And that's just the motor. That's not counting your drivetrain.
right.
Yes.
That's not the complete swap. That's not everything.
No, that was just the motor.
Just to get it
wiring
in,
harness.
wiring harness, motor, installation.
Yep.
Yep.
It did include any kind of upgrades.
I don't believe it did.
No?
I mean,
We can always check.
You got to have an adapter from the motor to the tranny that's
Transmit.
in there already, or
Right.
you're putting in another transmission,
Yep.
drive shafts.
These
rear
projects would
ends.
be fun to do, though, wouldn't it?
They're fun to do.
Takes time. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
going to do it yourself, do it yourself.
I mean,
but
if
do
I
it-
was going to do it to the LJ, it would be a 2-year process.
really,
Yep, because you're going. The easiest way is to pull the body off,
Yep.
and then you're all open up. Switch everything out, weld everything up, then start putting things back together.
wow,
Oren does that at Tractor
Yeah.
Trail. When he goes to do his thing,
yeah.
the body comes off. The body's
That's
off.
the first thing he does. Body's off, so
body-
he doesn't.
it-
He didn't have to work. It's
No.
easy to see, easy
Yep.
to get to. Okay,
That's pretty
makes
impressive.
sense.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, I went in the morning one time and he had a vehicle in. I came back, after lunch, and it was already everything was off.
Oh yeah,
We get him.
it's-
We should get. Can we get him out here?
We can try.
We can try. You think he'd do it?
we've reached out to him, man.
Really?
Never gotten a response from him. But yeah, I'm more than willing to get him. Try to get him here.
He's an off-road racer, king of the hammers.
Yeah, I
all
mean,
that
those are the
stuff.
great stories that we could.
Yes.
Oh man, that would be very, very
We'll try.
interesting.
I'll let
Yep.
I'll let Bart work him.
Okay,
All right, I'll have to ask.
you know him. You've got a pretty good.
Working relationship.
yeah.
He's been a very good guy.
You've spent money with him.
a little bit. Not
yeah?
like I'm not spending $100,000.
No,
some
but
of
you've
his-
spent. So you've.
Yeah,
you're a
yeah.
customer.
Yeah, I'm a
and you-
customer.
okay.
Yes, and same thing with Jason.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
a
I
few
know.
shops-
We got Jason here.
Yeah,
He's great.
There's a few shops
Yeah.
that I just trust, and it just depends on
Right. Okay.
what else having done.
Right. All right.
But we do have one for the day.
You do have a
one?
tool.
We do have a tool.
We got a tool.
Tool.
Hey, you see that idiot?
What the hell are you doing?
What are you doing?
What you think you're doing, you stupid idiot?
It's the Off-Road Toolbox Tool of the Day.
Are you some kind of moron?
It's kind of interesting. Now, this one is semi off road, so it's a group of people who are. So this is late October in Nevada at 8,000 feet. So they're actually going out hiking, camping, and hunting, and they're up in the mountains. So you remember, the end of October in high desert is going to be cold.
Very cold.
8,000 feet, yes. So, this, her name's Evie. Evie is with a group, and her husband and father stayed with the vehicle, and they're just spotting with, spotting scopes and binoculars, looking at things. And Evie went out with a couple of other people to a different location to, hunt and do what they're doing. And so at 2:00, she decides, hey, I'm going to hike back the short trail to the truck. So she takes off at 2:00, and the other group stayed, and they came back, and at 3:30 they came back, and so the husband goes, well, where's Effie? She goes, well, she's not here? Well, no, she left at 2:00. So evidently she was missing.
Oh.
So it ends up being a good story. So everybody starts backtracking, everybody starts looking. The husband, she left the backpack with the gear in it at the truck because she said, it's just a day thing. I'm not going to bring the backpack.
Famous last words.
Famous last words. So, and it's going to be cold. They're going to get weather. They're going to get, the temperature's going to drop. They're going to get rain/snow or whatever. It's going to be super cold. So the only thing she had was a whistle, a light fleece jacket, and a bright colored raincoat. And so in the backpack was the fire starter, the shelter, a little bit of just a small day pack, emergency food, but it was the Garmin InReach was in there. Okay. So when she was hiking, she went on a trail, she stepped off a trail and slid down a ravine.
Oh no.
And she didn't get injured, but then she couldn't climb back up. It was one of those where you try to climb back up, you slide down.
slide back down.
So I'm going to follow the trail down. So she follows the trail down, which makes it worse. So by 5:00, they still can't. Now they've been looking for her since 3:30. The family's been looking for them and friends, and so she decides it's starting again. You're going to be dark pretty soon if it's not already dark. So she finds a rock, and she didn't stay where she was and blew the whistle. She tried to get out, so she made it. She got further away. So she happened to find a big rock, put her bright red raincoat on, and just starts blowing the whistle. another group of hunters that the husband had met earlier in the morning was on this other side where she was, and they heard the whistle, and they came to get her. So they found her. So then, she goes, well, you got to contact my husband. And so he goes, okay. And he goes, so he has an inReach. So with his inReach, he got the information, and he programmed it in his inReach, and he texted the husband and say, hey, I'm so-and-so. We met this morning. I found your wife. She's okay. So the moral of the story was she had all the gear and she left it.
And she left all her gear.
She just take your backpack with you,
Yep.
take it with you. I mean, again,
Any little trip, any little wandering off could be really bad.
It's so many people go on a simple day hike and have the gear, but leave it in the vehicle, and it ended up working out well. And we have a picture of her, but it was pretty neat that luckily somebody heard the whistle.
Yep.
And they got to her. And I'd also suggest is if you're going to go out in the woods, I would carry a ham radio, either GRMS or ham radio. I would carry it so that wherever I'm away, my partners can have it. So then, if she fell down that ravine, the guys that were up on top that were still hunting, she could have said, "Hey guys, I fell down. Can you come and get me?" Something that simple. Or found her other ways, or use the inReach. So again, the tool of the day is having it and leaving it in the truck.
Yep, and that happens quite often.
But she didn't get hurt. They got good. No. And that night, because they're all camping, the weather got really bad. So it worked. She would probably...
It would have
hypothermia. It would have been
hypothermia.
It would have been hypothermia, yeah. Yeah. It's just good. I mean, carry the gear, go out. And they were off-roading to get to where they were and to do it. And then they went to a further spot hiking. So
Were they driving Jeeps?
Trucks.
Trucks? Yeah, that's the problem. They're not even Jeeps.
So, thank you, everybody.
Guys, we appreciate y'all tuning in, and we hope to see you next time. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
And there you have it. Don't you feel smarter now? We'll drop more knowledge on you soon. Thanks for listening to the Off-Road Toolbox, powered by Best Price Trailers.